The 1998 General Assembly was the last regular session of the 20th century, and from the beginning, legislators did their work with both a sense of the past and an eye towards the future. On the session's opening day, some of Kentucky's top historians reminded lawmakers in special ceremonies at the old Capitol that the good and bad decisions made by the legislature 100 years ago continue to affect Kentuckians today. And most certainly, decisions made in the 1998 session will continue to affect this Commonwealth for decades to come. From early January, the legislature debated some of the most difficult issues confronting our state. By the time warm spring days arrived, legislation on major issues had been passed, ranging from using lottery proceeds for college scholarships, to stabilizing the state's health insurance market, to toughening sentences for violent criminals. Let's focus now on a few of those issues. Lawmakers worked through a long debate over statewide school testing, seeking to correct serious problems that had badly eroded public confidence in the test known as QRIS. They came together in a bipartisan effort to draft a bill acceptable to both chambers. That bill will replace QRIS with a new test starting next year and will enable Kentucky scores to be compared with scores in other states nationwide, along with additional improvements. The legislature also took action this session to deliver on a promise most Kentuckians feel was made to them by lottery supporters more than a decade ago, by approving a bill to use lottery proceeds to create college merit scholarships for thousands of good students in the Commonwealth. The scholarships would be worth up to $2,500 annually for each student, although the actual awards would be tied to their grades. Students with the best grades would receive more than those with lower grade point averages. Family income would not be considered in awarding the scholarships. But importantly, for the first time, the bill would fully fund the state's financial aid program for students who demonstrate need. This is truly an investment in the next century by making a college education possible for virtually any student in the state who wants one.
Local maximum.
Lawmakers passed legislation aimed at curbing violence in schools. The bill creates a Center on School Safety to track violence at schools across the state. This will give Kentucky a centralized source to collect data about school violence and find innovative ways to prevent it. The center will also give school districts training and resources to make schools as safe as possible. The larger problem of societal crime was addressed as well, as the legislature approved some of the most sweeping anti-crime measures in decades. The Omnibus Crime Bill of 1998 will lengthen sentences for violent offenders. The bill requires that they serve 85% of their sentences before being eligible for parole. Currently, violent offenders are eligible for parole after serving just half their sentences. Another key feature of the legislation is the restoration of life without parole in capital cases such as murder. Currently, such offenders are eligible for parole after serving 25 years. In addressing problems in Kentucky's health insurance market, the 98 session revisited an issue that has been with us for some time. In a 1994 reform bill, lawmakers attempted to make health insurance more accessible by guaranteeing issuance of policies and prohibiting consideration of health status when setting rates. But many people argued those reforms led to skyrocketing premiums and instability in the insurance market. More than 40 companies stopped selling individual policies in Kentucky. In the 98 session, the legislature came together behind a plan that will allow insurers to once again base premiums to a limited extent on a person's health. However, the bill will protect the popular reform of guaranteed issue, which makes certain that everyone has the opportunity to buy health coverage. Children's issues also had a place on the table this session. Lawmakers lowered the threshold for intervention by the state in cases where children have been abused or neglected, and expanded the definition of child abuse to include parental drug abuse. The new law also makes it easier for the state to protect a child if that child's parent has already been convicted of abusing other children. More and more people are seeing clean air and clean water as treasured resources, and the 98th session responded to this with several bills to help protect Kentucky's wonderful natural environment. The General Assembly approved a water pollution bill designed to prevent the dumping of raw sewage from houseboats into Kentucky's rivers and lakes. Legislation was also approved to help stop straight pipe sewage discharge, the practice of running residential sewage lines directly into streams and rivers. During the session, lawmakers considered well over 1,000 bills.
Senator Herron.
Some worthwhile bills might not have made it through the entire process. But consider just a few of these that did and how they will improve the quality of life in Kentucky. The legislature set up a $63 million per year health insurance program for the children of the working poor. Lawmakers lowered taxes for people buying used vehicles, basing usage taxes on the actual price paid rather than an arbitrary book value. Laws were passed to stiffen penalties for people who exploit the elderly, abuse animals, or drive boats while intoxicated. A measure was approved that will prevent schools from denying students the right to pray during non-instructional times. The state's first ever comprehensive women's health bill was passed, requiring insurance companies to cover breast reconstruction surgery after cancer, physician-ordered bone density testing to diagnose osteoporosis, as well as the diagnosis and treatment of endometriosis. Legislators approved a bill that will increase the salaries of firefighters and law enforcement personnel, while also increasing grants to volunteer fire departments. They approved informed consent legislation that establishes a 24-hour waiting period for abortions and ensures that women planning on having abortions receive information from their physicians about the procedure and their alternatives. They also passed legislation to ban a late-term practice, often referred to as a partial birth abortion. Finally, as part of a balanced state budget that devotes millions of dollars in surplus money to much-needed capital construction projects statewide, lawmakers voted to build 2 more veterans nursing homes in Kentucky to care for the vets who sacrificed so much for our country. The nursing homes are just 2 of literally hundreds of projects, large and small, made possible by the state's booming economy. When the session convened, the state's budget surplus stood at about $222 million. If the strong economy holds, as many believe it will, that figure could go significantly higher. In light of this, lawmakers agreed with the governor. This was a good time to invest in long-needed capital construction and improvement projects the length and breadth of the Commonwealth. Virtually every corner of the state will be touched in some way by the fruits of a prosperity that has enabled such investment in the future. This is just a quick wrap-up of the accomplishments in the 1998 session. All told, some 550 individual pieces of legislation passed both chambers and became law. One of the more productive sessions in recent memory. But now, lawmakers turn their attention to preparations for the first regular session of the 21st century, which will convene January 4th of the year 2000. Already, the issues are being defined that legislators will discuss in monthly interim committee meetings between now and then. In addition to the regular interim committees, the 98th session created or reauthorized 30 special committees and task forces on topics as diverse as Veterans Affairs, wildlife funding, electrical utility restructuring, and tobacco-related issues. So the coming months promise to be busy as the groundwork is laid for the 2000 session, and it's never too early to get involved. We urge you to follow this interim work and to stay in touch with your elected representatives. You can always reach any member of the General Assembly by calling our toll-free message line, 1-800-372-7181. And you can follow interim committee work by subscribing to the monthly legislative record and the weekly legislative calendar. Just call 502-564-8100 and ask for the LRC Public Information Office.